Good afternoon, everyone. I apologize for the slight delay. I've got 2:02 Eastern time, but nonetheless, we are here. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for attending another great edition of the Skillshare webinar series by the National Center of Pavement Preservation and hosted by the Midwest Pavement Partnership. My name is Rob Green. I'm with the Michigan Department of Transportation. And I'll be your host this afternoon. Our moderator is my good friend, Mr. Phil Ruffus from the Missouri DOT. Before we get started, for those of you who are new or have not attended one of our webinars, we run our webinars a little different than some of the other webinars that you may have attended. One of the things that we like to try to promote is an opportunity to interact as much as possible. So what you'll see is we got a panel that's set up that's going to provide a brief presentation on the topic at hand, and then the majority of the time together today is going to be spent doing active question and answer period. So you'll see on the control panel on the side through the go-to, you'll see a questions pod. Please put your questions in there. One other thing to note, that there are professional or continuing education credits for this webinar, and those will be emailed out after the webinar. So on to today. Today's topic is one that has been an ongoing discussion within the PCC pavement community for years. When I bounced the idea off of Larry Schofield, he thought it'd be a great topic for a webinar like ours. The topic I'm referring to is with jointed plain concrete. Do we seal those joints or do we leave them unsealed? This topic has been extensively researched, but agencies continue with one practice or another. Today we'll dive into those agency practices and understand why they do what they do. To help us with that, let me introduce today's panel. Today we have with us Jeff Mann, who is a subject matter expert with WSP and formerly with the New Mexico Department of Transportation. We've got Scott from Quality Saw and Seal, which is a contractor based out of Illinois. We've got Sarah from Arkansas DOT, and then the Midwest's very own John Singer from Illinois DOT. We recognize that our audience stretches from coast to coast, and in this case, different climatic zones, and so does our panel today. As I mentioned, just a reminder, I'm hoping everybody has a lot of questions. Please utilize the question pod. What we have found with these webinars is that we typically run out of time to get to everybody's question. We will definitely circle back with the panelists to get those questions answered, but if you want the opportunity to kind of get input from everybody and kind of have a little bit of that dialogue, please get them in sooner rather than later. With that, I will now turn it over to Phil and the rest of the panel.
Thank you. So, Phil Ruffus, MoDOT here. Like I said earlier, I'll be moderating the entire chat panel the whole time. So go ahead and throw some questions in at any time. What I'll do in the background, we're going to take questions at the very end, like Rob said. I'll be taking those questions, perhaps even replying to some of you with some quick answers, but otherwise continuing to gather them all the way through and kind of assigning one of our panelists to discuss it. So as I talk right now, one of the things we do is a little transitions. We'll throw up a quick poll because I'd like to know who I'm dealing with. We've had quite a few people from DOTs, but lately we've getting more and more academics and consultants growing our growing webinar panel. So why not go ahead and to give it about another 5-6 seconds, I'm going to pull that down. While I do it, I'd like to bring upon our first speaker as he sets himself up. We're going to talk to Jeff. Jeff, as he has mentioned, worked for the New Mexico DOT, was quite familiar with pavements, quite familiar with sealing, quite familiar with everything pretty much down there, and has recently taken a job with WSP. So, by the way, there's the numbers. As we get him up forward, let's pull ahead his presentation. Let's pull it up for us right now as I walk him through it. Jeff's going to take us from top to bottom today. So we'll start at the top. We'll start about concepts. We'll start about background. We'll start about just knowledge in general, and then kind of dive down through a contractor's perspective when I introduce Scott, and then come from my partner to the south in Arkansas, and then of course my partner to the east in Illinois. So as I wait for Jeff, let's go ahead and pull your presentation up and let's get started with the overall knowledge.
That's great. Can you see my screen?
Nope, otherwise I would have said I could see you.
All right.
So as we work every webinar, I really actually worry quite a bit. I see you now and I see me again. So there we are. And I'm ready for you right now. Jeff, go ahead and take it away.
Okay, everybody can hear me. That's great. Yeah. So my name is, as was introduced, my name is Jeff Mann with WSP. Spent 4 years here at WSP. Previous to that, from 2006 to 2021, I was at New Mexico DOT. So Hashim Vayedi asked me to present on some of our knowledge that we gained through working at DOT. I'll just jump right in, hopefully. There we go. Yeah, so just four or five bullets I wanted to talk about. New Mexico DOT's position on seal versus no seal, go through our specs, which suggests we do have a position, or DOT, I say we, but DOT has a position on the sealing. Average unit bid costs, which might help some folks get their head around what the costing is. Some photos of sealed joints, deteriorated and non-deteriorated, and some pavement management concepts for sealing those joints. So very quickly, in terms of New Mexico DOT, New Mexico's not a significant concrete pavement state. We've only got about 300 lane miles. That's majority through the city of Albuquerque. Some ports to plains areas, and some border concrete pavement as well. In terms of construction and design, the majority of it is joint plane concrete pavement, typical joint spacings of 15 feet long and 12 feet wide. We do have a CRCP project that's with the border of New Mexico, or I'm sorry, the border with New Mexico and Mexico. That's New Mexico 136. Typical tie bars and dowels, 18-inch dowels and tie bars are constructed. I think this is one of the reasons why DOT does seal is typically our sub base or our base is untreated base course. What I think in the business is called a sub base. One is New Mexico DOT has experimented with a bound material sub base, but due to cost reasons, it's typically been untreated. So, and that bottom bullet there, it really says it all, is that New Mexico DOT requires sealing. So we are a seal state at this point. A little bit of reason why. I think based on my experience at the DOT is we didn't see a lot of pumping. But with that, we don't get a lot of rain, right? For sure. But one of our biggest issues, as we are the desert, that second bullet is I think blowing sand and aggregates are a risk. And of course, I put in parentheses, yeah, I think everyone on the call probably recognizes that narrow joint widths that are unsealed. There's a lowering risk there, but again, I still think New Mexico DOT felt comfortable with sealing them. New Mexico is in an arid, non-freeze environment. We just don't have a lot of vegetation. Average wind speed, pretty high. If you've been here, if you've visited any time, it's windy more or less every day. And in the spring, it's very high winds, high risk of incompressibles, in our opinion. And then not a lot of rain, but when it does rain, it's monsoons. Monsoons are probably anywhere between June through August. It's about maybe 15 to 20 minutes, and it's short duration and very high intensity. And of course, that's what led leadership. And when I was at DOT, to continue to seal those concrete pavement joints. I think this is a pretty telling photo. To the north of this is the New Mexico border, where the CRCP project is, and one of the intersections there is joint plain concrete pavement, 6 miles. Right away width is probably around 70 feet. And you can see there's very little vegetation. So it's a very sandy, A1A or I actually it's probably more like an A3 environment if you're familiar with AASHTO. So a lot of sand, a lot of blow sand, some small to medium sized aggregate, lots of risk there for potential incompressibles. Moving along very quickly, our specification, I say our, DOTs, again, I used to be DOT, so I say our, 452 sealing, resealing. The silicone, that second bullet, is what I'm most familiar with, the silicone product. No personal experience with any low modulus product. But for anybody online, I certainly don't have a problem sending this to you spec, or really you can get these specifications online through the DOT website. Going along with this, more of the specification, it is on the approved products list. I think most states, if not all states, require some degree of approved products list. In the specification, it also references manufacturer guidelines, which makes sense in most states to have a temperature limitation. These pay items is fairly typical. Unit is linear foot. It could be quantified fairly easy. You take a mile, you take 15 feet long, you take 12 feet wide. It's fairly simple in that. Work included in pavement is the cleaning and the sealing of the joints, and then sealant, labor, and equipment. It's fairly straightforward. I'm sorry. And most likely follows most other states, at least based on my experience. Standards, I think these need to be updated, but that is our current standard. I think they're a bit outdated, but at one point they were fairly consistent with ACPA, American Concrete Pavement Association, and generally other states. So going very quickly, I know I don't want to run out of time or prevent from others. So this is a snapshot of a submittal. I'm sure other pavement engineers are online or provided similar during projects. It was the responsibility of the DOT pavement engineer to review the product submittal, and this is a fairly standard submittal during the construction phase. The top snapshot, and then the bottom snapshot is just the APL, the approved products list from DOT, and all that is online. And I think that 890 is the third or fourth product submittal there at the bottom. So of course it's the APL, and the product was approved, if I can recall. So average unit bid cost, you can see we don't, DOT doesn't place a lot of pavement, but 2022 placed a lot of pavement, a lot of concrete pavement, I'm sorry. 42,000 linear feet is not a whole lot, but it at least was, if I recall, a fair amount of jobs. I think the 21, 23, and 24 projects were most likely maintenance projects. So not a lot of sealing. And then I think one final bullet. Oh, we got some photos to kind of show you these. Now that I look at it, maybe I should have dedicated a photo per page. Some of these are in varying degrees. This concrete pavement, I was there when they built it in 2006. So these joints have really lasted quite a long time. The majority of them, anyway. Some areas of degree deterioration. The bottom right's got some deterioration. Of course, I was out there a month ago, and they're looking at readdressing these joints. So credit to DOT. And then pavement management. So most states, if not all, are required to have a pavement management database for 23 CFR 490. The DOT recognizes something right there in the top left called a joint and crack seal. So that is in a decision tree. The table 17, if you will, considers to start considering maintenance effort at 10 years. And then the bottom is where that the bottom snapshot, if you will, is where that money comes from, and it's typically a maintenance budget, where the crack seal of the really it should say crack and joint seal of the concrete pavement. So I think that might be it. Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. Again, my name is Jeff Mann. I work for WSP here in Albuquerque, and I appreciate the opportunity to present.
Thanks, Jeff. So we've got an overview. We've got a view out west. We got a view from a different part of the United States. So as we pull up another one, let me just do a little bit of witty banter, if you will. Interestingly enough, we have quite a bit of a local showing. So I think this is one of our highest, where we have a bunch of locals that have shown up today. I really like seeing those kind of things as well. So let's talk about it. What does your agency do? If it doesn't know or you don't know, let me know. But as we've seen, well, it's right there in front of us now, team. Quite a few seal. Missouri does not. So ironically, nobody asked, but MoDOT doesn't actually seal our joints. It's been back and forth and back and forth. So we've talked about an overview. We've talked about out west. I'd like to hear from a contractor now. So the next person that we'd like to chat is we're going to bring in Scott. We're going to bring in Scott up north. We're going to bring him from, I think it's from Chicago. Don't quote me on that. To bring us a little bit more down and take it maybe a little bit more of a contract spin, more of a real life spin of this. Scott?
Yeah, Rob, you hear me?
I do hear you. And
All right, great. All right, guys, I'm a little different than some of the other panelists. I'm a contractor out of Chicago, owner of Quality Saw and Seal, and a board member of the International Grooving and Grinding Association. All I'm trying to basically do is, if you are sealing your joints or thinking of sealing your joints, trying to give you some basic information to get the most as an owner out of our sealants. Basically, we have a quick slide up here showing our concrete pavements. The reason why this is up here is I think that one thing the industry is seeing that goes unforgotten if you're going to seal your joints, we know we're getting dominant joint movement every so often in our concrete pavements. And as you're looking to seal your joints, be conscious of the movement in these dominant joints you may see in your concrete pavements. Quick slide on saw cut controlled cracking, and hopefully what we've probably all seen in a bad light, and that's uncontrolled cracking. An initial saw cut over on our left, and an initial saw cut with a widened joint with neoprene compression seal on our right. Couple different things. The sealant cost effective. You know, we understand the industry's still out on that. You know, the FHWA basically said no. AASHTO's new design guide says yes. The benefits we believe of joint sealing, a couple of the big things obviously are minimizing our water getting through our pavements and incompressibles, which is hugely important, especially with some of the studies that were done up in Wisconsin in the last couple of years, reducing subgrade softening, pumping, erosion of fines, and spalling. Jury's still out whether it helps prevent joint-associated distress, and we believe it extends concrete pavement performance. On this slide, you know, real good picture there of what we believe incompressible slab growth when we're not sealing our joints. As we look here on this one, you can see some of the undermining on that bottom left picture, and on the right, pumping water out from underneath some of our concrete pavements. This is actually an excellent slide. This is on some work done in northern Illinois on some older pavement that just shows a deterioration that developed along a large crack, which just shows the damage that can happen, what we believe with the movement and water and moisture and everything going through our concrete slabs. As we look at our joint design systems, again, it's transverse joints, edge of pavement, the shoulder joints, and where's it going? Couple of different in the reservoir designs. On our left, an unfilled open joint, a single saw cut filled joint, a single saw cut with a reservoir filled joint. Now we get into the sealed joints, and that would be a single saw cut, reservoir cut with backer rod and sealant on top. Same type of thing with a neoprene compression seal on your right. One thing that's really important that we're starting to look at is if you're sealing your concrete pavements, you should be flush filling them if you're hot pour sealing them. That's over on the left, but it's bad for the silicones to flush fill it. In the middle, recess sealing for silicone sealants is always good, and it's okay for hot pours, but if you flush fill it, we find the traffic keeps the sealant rejuvenated for longer life. Bad for silicone is the wrong type of recess in there. But the one thing the industry is starting to look at, and we're going to do some work on it this year, is how vertical load impacting is affecting the bonds and adhesion factors of our sealants moving forward. Sealant types on top, silicone sealants, non-sag, self-leveling, rapid cures. Rapid cures are typically used for our various expansion joint systems. Hot pour, standard modulus, low modulus, and on the bottom, compression seal. While there's a whole world of sealants out there in the industry, these are basically the three most commonly used. Hot pour sealants allow for 25% extension, silicones 50% compression to 100% extensions, compression seals 15% minimum to 50% extensions. What's really important is if you guys are looking at sealing your concrete pavements, this is an app that the American Concrete Pavement Association has on their website. You can put in for the types of sealant with those movement rates on their sealants, along with your movement rates in your concrete pavements to see if things are compatible. So that's a great tool to use. And again, that's on the American Concrete Pavement Association app. Most manufacturers, this one for silicone and for neoprene, if you go to their literature, they have all this type of information in there. For your recess levels and your movement levels and all that, so make use of it. It's pretty much all on their websites. Silicone joint sealant configuration. On your left is a non-sag sealant that needs to be tooled. On your right is basically the look of a self-leveling sealant, always recessing at least 1/4 to 3/8 below the surface, following a 2-to-1 ratio, and tooling would be required for your non-sags. When you're looking on this, again, flush filling down there on your left for hot pour sealants, where you find the effectiveness is huge. Recess joint in the middle with a beveled edge on top. And again, showing the flush filled over on your right. What I'm bringing up here on that top right, guys, is a lot of states, a lot of different agencies overfill their concrete joints. We highly recommend not to overfill your joints in your concrete pavements. We find that it's bad for the sealant and you won't get the life out of it. So that's why that's up there with a circle around it. As we look at the shipping and storing of materials, again, typically this is your hot pour sealants, all different types in there. That's the way we take delivery on it. Bag and everything goes right in the kettles. This is packaging for our silicone sealants. Why we included both of those slides in there, guys, is a lot of agencies require our materials to be shipped to the job site upon delivery, for various reasons. With both sealants, you don't want it out in the direct sunlight in the heat of the summer. You also don't want it when our temperatures get really, really cold. So if you're putting that in your specs, be conscious of that because it will take its toll on the sealant before it ever goes in your pavements. How are materials tested, whether it be, the DOT certification or owner laboratory or outsourced testing, but I know here in Illinois, all hot pour sealants that we take, we make sure that IDOT certifies it before we take delivery on it. Joint sealant installation. This is probably the biggest slide that I have in the whole presentation to the group. This is a relative cost study the ACPA did a number of years ago. Down in the yellow is showing the costing of our initial saw cuts. In the red is basically the costing for the reservoir cuts. The white is showing the cost of the cleaning. and the gray is showing the cost of the furnish and installation of our sealants. And for me as an installer, believe me, our industry, I believe, does a horrible job cleaning and installing our sealants. And that is proof that the fact is, out of all those 4 levels, in my opinion, that the cleaning should be the largest of all 4. And this was taken from the industry, and it shows as an industry how poor of a job we do properly cleaning our joints before the sealant installation. So what I would encourage to you guys as engineers and owners, pay attention to that if guys are specifying and sealing the joints in your concrete pavements. This is just a picture of showing pressure washing our joints after the control joint sawing is done, prior to the sandblasting and sealing, for the whole point of silica and meeting OSHA's requirements. As we get into the media blasting portion of cleaning joints, why I included this slide is this was an intermodal yard in Joliet, Illinois that was saw cut, widened, pressure washed, and then sandblasted 2 days later. And you can see by the amount of dust and dirt from the remnant of concrete on the sidewalls, look at the amount of debris in the air, which shows you how much remnant is still on those joint faces after pressure washing, which shows the importance of trying to utilize sandblasting prior to your joint sealing. If you're going to require joint sandblasting, again, there's OSHA standards that the contractors need to abide by. This is part of it. I know with our crews, we follow all standards, which means proper protection and testing that we do for all of our crews. As we look at cleaning our joints, another method is we know a lot of agencies and owners use wire brushes. We do not recommend wire brushes as a final cleaning method. When they knock off the tops of the knotted wire wheels on these brushes, you then run a very strong risk of putting a glaze on the sidewalls of those joints. So we do in no way promote or recommend allowing wire brushes to be used as the final cleaning method. As we talk about back garage, just a couple pictures. Always you want it to be 25% larger than the joint. What's really important, if you're using and requiring a Sarah rod or a back rod in your outdoor applications, please specify that it's always a closed cell back rod so that it can't and won't take on moisture in that joint, promoting any kind of joint deterioration. And do not overstretch the back rod in the application. Installing our sealants. Here's just a picture of a neoprene installation machine, which pretty much puts it in the right stretching and application rates for the industry. As you look at our sealant acceptance, this picture's in there strictly because if you guys are examining joints prior to sealant installation, this is the type of cleanliness you should be seeing before you allow the contractors to install the sealants in those joints. Again, this was just a picture, all kind of one slide. As we define sealant life, this is the only thing that's out there that we're aware of, LTPP, pavement maintenance. And to show you how far out of whack these types of guides are on all the different sealants. This is a recently taken hot pour sealant at Fairchild Air Force Base up in Washington. This is 20-year-old hot pour sealant, still functioning properly. We know on single saw cut hot pour filled joints here in the Chicagoland area, we've got sealants that are well beyond 20 to 25 years. So that information we believe is old and outdated. This is, again, can the industry seal a joint? On the left, 20-year-old pavement, functioning perfectly. 1-year-old pavement, not properly installed, and you can see the adhesion is already letting loose on the entire thing. When we're looking to reseal our joints, we don't really have a 5, 10, 15-year type of catalog to follow. We believe you actually need to get out on your job sites, look at adhesive failures, co-adhesive failures, and the amount of damaged or missing sealant to determine whether you should be resealing your joints at that point or not. When we talk about crack pavement, there's 2 slides here. This is an industry crack chase saw that you can use for crack chasing with diamond blades versus typically most agencies require a router. It's a little hard to see from the picture, but you see on the bottom left the spalling that happens with those carbide blades along those concrete edges. So why we included the slide is so you can see you can handle cracks with diamond blades should you choose to do that. There's a picture of the router teeth on the routers. One thing about early entry saws, we know that the industry looks at this. Iowa, certain other states are big on them. Remember to the group here, if you're requiring guys use early entry saws, what's critical for success on early entry saws is when they change blades, you want to make sure they're changing the skid plates on the bottom of them saws with every blade, so on the picture on the right, you don't get that kind of damage done from those skid plates. And that's just kind of a high note to throw in there. Basically, kind of a quick little summary, but the big one there is ensure proper cleaning and preparation, guys. Clean, dry, and bondable. Real quick, we want to refer you to the Seal No Seal Group website. Also on the IGGA website, there's some tech briefs that the industry has put together. Joint sealing prior to resealing concrete joints. A couple of pictures in it, incompressibles. Some slurry in there. The amount of slurry for vacuuming we believe needs to be dealt with. Here's another tech brief of the use of vacuums for your information. A couple different applications. Another tech brief, filling narrow joints in concrete pavements. So the whole point is to the group, if you go to the Seal No Seal website and IGJ's website, we've tried to give you some additional information for joint sealing applications if you're a state that is looking or doing joint sealing. Rob, that pretty much concludes it.
Thank you. That was very impressive. Very impressive. I think I learned more about stuff that I had no idea in the 30 years I've done this job. Thank you for all that. We're about halfway through our presenters right now, and I'm just going to go ahead and say it out loud. I'm not seeing a lot of questions. So I know you have got to be having questions, team. And if you're just afraid, I'm the only one that sees it. Go ahead and throw some questions into there. One Rob mentioned earlier, one of the things I think we do really well with MP3's webinars is we have a little back and forth discussion. So I would encourage you, and now I'm quite possibly even begging you, to throw some of those conversations, because that's kind of stuff these guys have got prepared material for us. Maybe there's a couple of tangents that we just don't see coming down. So now we again have a pour as we transition to the south of the most common, if you seal, stuff as well. Thank you. There's your answer. Mostly is hot poured. Okay, so we've got an overview. We've got a contract view, which both have provided me with a lot of information. Let's go ahead and ask an actual DOT. And I think the DOT I want to start with is we're going to go south of Missouri to a state called Arkansas. Currently, I see my friend from Arkansas. Arkansas, sorry, Sarah. Sarah's joining us from Arkansas. And I'd like you to go ahead and, Sarah, please explain to us what Arkansas does. The floor is yours.
Okay, so Arkansas is a seal state. We seal all of our concrete pavements. We are not, my mouse is not working. Okay. We do not have a lot of concrete in Arkansas, and we also have a tendency to cover up our concrete with asphalt. So currently, surface-wise, only about 3% of our system is concrete, and we have about 16,000 centerline miles, so we really don't have much concrete in the state. And this map is, I apologize, is slightly out of date. Part of this concrete has been covered up with asphalt in the last few years. So we really just don't have a whole lot of concrete, but we do have some pretty decent specifications that have been around for a while. I was going to go through them, but after the initial presentations and the excellent presentation we just had, I think a lot of that information has already been covered. But if you're interested in our spec books, Section 509 in our spec books and Section 512 have a lot of that information on what we specify when we are having construction projects, and it's all available on the web. And that is just a continuation of our requirements for our joint sealing. and our standard drawings that we have in our specs. Now, the only times that we are not good about resealing joints and having a joint rehab program. So typically we only seal our joints at construction, or if we diamond grind them. So these are just another couple examples of our joint sealant specifications. And this is what our typical pavements look like on our new construction with our joint sealants. And then this is one of our examples of our recently completed diamond grinds with the dowel bar retrofit that we did do joint sealant on. Unfortunately, last time I was driving on this section of road, I'd noticed some of the joint sealants had already started to fail. So I really didn't have that much to share, and that is actually the end of what I had. Is more, I wanted to say that if you're not doing much, you're not alone. We're not doing much either.
Thank you, Sarah. Short but brief. Let's go ahead and drive. Let's drive through Missouri to get to our next place, Illinois. And while we drive through Missouri, in Missouri, in particular, where I work is the St. Louis Metro District. So my district, surrounded by the 4 counties, have quite a bit of composite pavement. As I mentioned earlier, and I'm learning quite a bit, I think MoDOT does it district by district, and really more of a champion, lack of a champion has been the way that we've done it. So we've built quite a few new things, especially since 2008. And a vast majority of our new construction is in fact in concrete and is not sealed. So as we're going through Missouri, let's look at my last poll for you and go ahead, give them a little bit longer, Todd, on this one, because they're flashing by pretty quick. I'm not sure we had everybody have an opportunity to vote. And go ahead and tell me, do you have any other issues? Our challenges here, and especially out west in Kansas City, where our aggregates are weak and soft, is decracking. So I guess that may be one of the reasons that we don't particularly crack quite a bit, because most of them we're losing long before we get in there. So now that we've looked at that, I have one final person coming up as I show you our quick poll. The final person we're going to talk about is, I believe, Director of Research, Bureau of Research at IDOT, John Sanger, a valued member of MP3 for as long as I've been in it. And I can see John. And we're going to go ahead and see maybe Illinois' vision, maybe Illinois' version. So as soon as I feel comfortable, John, why don't you go ahead and take it away? John?
All right, thank you, Phil. So Illinois has long been a no-seal state. I believe most of our policy came from one of the original Wisconsin DOT studies that moved everybody towards a thin saw cut in order to minimize the entrance for compressibles and debris into our joints. So I'm going to start off with just a standard of our jointed pavements. We typically build anywhere from 12 to 15 foot jointed panels, 12-foot wide lanes, and we do dowel all of our joints. But I think one of the things that I wanted to highlight here, when we do build a jointed pavement or any kind of concrete pavement, we do have a stabilized subbase below it. So that could be a concrete aggregate mixture or a CAM or a stabilized HMA subbase. We typically don't build anything with an unbound layer below the concrete, which kind of helps minimize the amount of incompressibles that could come up from the bottom. So I just wanted to point out, we've got 2 different joints that we call out here. Our longitudinal sawed joint, assuming that they paved this 24-foot wide, and then our transverse joints that I am going to scroll into here in a second. So first we'll visit the detail on the transverse. As you can see, we've got a 3/16 of an inch max sawed groove at T/3. And typically we try and center it over the 18-inch dowel that's at that joint. And then for our longitudinal joints, if it's a sawed joint, And even if it's a formed joint, we go through and we use hot poured joint sealer over those 30-inch tie bars tying the two lanes together. So I was just doing some research. I couldn't find any documents on exactly when we moved to this no seal, but looking at the standard, this was issued in 1997. So we've been at this for at least well, 28 years, almost 30 years. So we've got quite a bit of history on this. I did pull up a lot of our pavement inventory, our pavement management stuff last night, and looking at all the jointed pavement that we do have in the state, we've only got about 10% of that pavement that is suffering from some sort of joint deterioration. Now, I can't tell you that that's related to incompressibles getting in and causing spalling, or if it could be materials related, because we do suffer from decracking like our neighbors to the west, as well as ASR, which we do have some trouble with that attacking our joints as well. So that's kind of where we're at. I did find an old report. Hopefully I can find it here real quick. That's it. From the ASHO road test back in 1977, and they were talking about joint deterioration and the optimal joint spacing and other things that could potentially minimize joint deterioration. And it's just interesting that we're still having this conversation 50 years later about whether to seal or no seal and how to prevent joint deterioration. So that's all I've got, Phil. If we want to move on to the panel discussion and questions, that would be fantastic.
Okay, 10-4. All right, so this time we'll go ahead with quite a bit of noise there a little bit for a minute. So we've got through the meat of our program. Obviously, we've had some opinions, we've had some ideas. Go ahead and ask my panel to show yourselves for me. As I've got a couple of questions. So you listened, well done. I asked and you gave. So we have quite a few questions that have come up. I'm gonna assume Stat's there somewhere, but I can hear him. And I don't see Jeff either. So let's assume they're both on there just because it's fun to assume. So we have quite a few questions, and I think I'll start really kind of with a softball I didn't see coming in from left field. So I'm gonna throw this to the group. Regarding concrete overlays or white topping, seal or no seal? Uh-oh, you shook your head, Sarah. Looks like you're starting. You're muted, my friend. Sorry.
You would think by now I'd have that down, but
No, I'll just give you grief. Sorry, I was chuckling at myself.
no, we've actually just done our first white topping and we sealed it, but it's the only one we have, so.
Yeah, here in Missouri, we've white topped 4 things and we have sealed every single one. So if there's no other one, I just start off with a softball because it's always fun to start with a softball. But with reference to it, anybody else, New Mexico, Illinois, and my friends to the north, have you guys ever played with white topping? Otherwise, I'll go right into the other questions.
We do have a couple white topping projects. We do have an unbonded 6-inch concrete overlay that's on one of our interstates. I believe we are taking the same approach that we seal the longitudinal construction joint, but not the transverse joints.
10-4. Okay, cool. May, I just saw you. Let me get back to you in a minute because I don't want to go too far down that particular question. Let me start back at the top because I want to go back to Jeff. He hasn't talked in a while, but I want to read these directly to you so I don't get them wrong. So if I stumble, that's on me. So Jeff, does New Mexico only seal the initial construction? I think, and as Sarah says, they've gone back and forth. I think John has as well. Because you talk to other states, Jeff, at all, and focusing on your time at New Mexico, what is the general feeling of when you seal? Is it only an initial, or do you see any trends in other states that you're familiar with? But first, talk about New Mexico. When do you seal? Only an initial or not? Jeff?
When you say initial, you mean initial cut?
Initial constructions. I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
didn't read
Oh,
that
yeah,
perfectly.
initial, yeah,
My apologies.
I'm sorry, yeah. So initial construction and then once, so again, I left DOT at 2021, but what was there when I was there is once the project is completed, it's placed in our pavement management database. And that's when the clock starts ultimately. So there's a decision tree, and then at 10 years is when seal maintenance, if you will, is start to be considered. Yeah, so
Sweet.
there'll be like a little flag that says, hey, you should start considering seal or filling these concrete pavement joints. So
Sweet.
there'll be like a field visit, and then if it needs to be sealed, then a decision is made at that point.
Cool. I think Scott also had mentioned in his presentation that there was really no clear, definitive, and this question, sorry, Taylor, I'm answering your question. I think it's all over the board. I don't think you're really going to get your answer, but it's all up and down. And I think Scott brought up a point as I talk a little bit for him. You got to have somebody look at it too. So maybe at year 10, you begin that process out west, particularly, and then you go from there. Scott, can you still hear me? Would you comment about, here's a question for you. You're talking about no more adhering to the sidewalls. Is there anything else that my inspector can look for when he begins assessment of our joints?
Well, you know, Rob, quite honestly, if you're out there visually looking at your roadways, and whether it's loss of adhesion or just flat out missing sealant, you know, we've always believed a partially sealed joint is worse than either an unsealed or a totally sealed joint. So if you're seeing a lot of missing sealant or loss of adhesion, it's probably time to start looking at resealing those joints.
10-4. Actually, that's pretty kind of cool. A partially sealed is worse than nothing. Interesting.
So
Vince,
hold on, before we jump
Rob?
away from that one, I guess, Scott, I quick follow up on that one. So if we run into a situation to where we see that we've got we're missing partial, and you say that we need to reseal, can you walk us through what that project usually looks like? Should owners be pulling out the remaining existing material, or are we sealing over top of it, or what is your recommendation?
Well, when you look at, you know, I think a big part of that, guys, is the fact of what climate are you in, right? If we're talking Illinois, freeze-thaw cycles, all that other stuff, you would want that sealant out. If you're gonna reseal your joints, you want that sealant removed, your joint faces refaced, properly cleaned, and then resealed, period. You know, again, if you're in the drier states, maybe not so much necessarily, but in our freeze-thaw, bad weather inclement type of things, you want that sealant out because a partially sealed joint, you don't want to be trapping all that water and moisture in underneath the sealants and in our concrete pavements. We don't want to accelerate any potential possible risk of joint deterioration in those types of environments. So you really want to get it out entirely, re-clean those joints, and reseal those joints.
Rob,
Thank you.
the floor's still yours. Good drop in. Good drop in. So back to question. Let's go and ask this question. If I'm understanding you correctly, I'm reading this directly. You're placing the concrete slab directly in the subgrade, and I assume this is going out west in New Mexico. Do you think the unsealed joints perform better when the concrete is placed directly on top of a drainage layer? And this is actually to Mr. Mann. Mr. Mann? Jeff? Oh, I think you're muted.
I was muted. Yeah, I was muted out of respect. Can you run by the question again?
I would love to. I'm going to read it directly. And it says this. It is regarding New Mexico. If I'm understanding correctly, you're placing concrete slabs directly on the subgrade, question mark. Do you think unsealed joints will perform better when concrete is placed on top of a drainage layer accordingly, question mark? Jeff?
So, yeah, so I guess I either misspoke or confused. Now there's always I don't even want to use the word interlayer, but I will. There's an interlayer or a subbase. So subgrade, compacted, 95% compaction. And then an untreated base course is what is typical. So there is a drainage. Yeah, it's an A1A. It's a fairly untreated, but it's not bound, right? Some states use bound, asphalt treated, or some other. What New Mexico uses, again, I left in 2021. As far as I know, they still use it. It's just untreated base.
Thank you.
So there's a higher risk. There's a higher risk of pumping.
Agreed. So when you guys see, I'll ask you this question. During nasty July and nasty August, which was said out loud, do you feel or do you have any knowledge that blowups occur more often when you seal versus not sealing? And that might be one of the reasons that MoDOT doesn't seal in general. So what we'll get is a picture like I believe Scott showed us where the pavement humps up. I call that a blowup. Do any of you have any evidence or an opinion even that would cause more blowups when you're in fact trapping moisture coming from the subgrade in my story? Anyone? Wow, I stumped you.
I was going to say, I think
I don't think it's a moisture problem.
Okay.
So
I was
your
gonna say-
concrete's trying to expand, and the forces in that expansion are greater than what the concrete can withstand. So that's what causes that blow up, that tinting.
Sweet. I didn't know that. Thanks, John.
Wisconsin
gonna
just had a
say-
really good report on that.
Would you mind sending me that before I retire? I'd like to read it.
How many days do I have?
Well, it's in front of everyone, perhaps offline. We'll talk
Okay.
about that later.
We'll talk.
Speaking of Illinois, Oshak wants to ask you, what percentage of Illinois' concrete pavements are experiencing joint distress since your state is a no stress, no seal state, John?
So
Ballpark it.
ballpark it, it's probably 10% or less of our jointed pavements that are seeing joint distress.
Okay.
We have about 15% of our network is concrete. That is probably split in half by jointed and CRC. So we've got a significant number of miles in concrete, but to this point in time, we don't see a whole lot of joint distress.
Okay. Speaking of joint distress, ACPC, asphalt concrete, concrete seals, like say on shoulders. Does your sealing efforts or desires matter when you have asphalt butting against concrete curbs? I paraphrased that one, sorry. You want it again, or does somebody want to trash that one?
So I'm guessing the question is would you seal the lane shoulder joint if you had an asphalt shoulder? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's it. That's probably a better way of saying it. Thank you, John. Does that affect your decision tree? And I know you don't seal, so it's awkward, but you're pretty.
We do seal our longitudinal joints, and that we would seal that if we were to build that today. But all of our concrete pavements today have a concrete shoulder to handle edge stresses. So we tie the shoulder and the lane together in order to handle those edge stresses. So we don't build it with asphalt shoulders anymore.
It's interesting because I think that's what a lot of my issues are, is I have too much composite pavement.
Yeah, I was going to say, Phil, I know that was a practice there for a while, and Michigan was just as guilty, right, on trying to save a few dollars by putting in HMA shoulders next to the concrete. And, looking at it evidence-wise, it doesn't appear that we initially sealed them. And now as that deterioration accelerates, now we're looking at trying to find ways, utilizing mastics or other materials to kind of try to seal that, to slow that deterioration along that interface.
Cool. Speaking of asphalt, somewhat of surprise, I'm transitioning. I'm going to get back to May's questions. She's now thrown several in there. Thank you for keep sending them. I really appreciate it, but I'm trying to keep up. So going a bit off topic, and I just want to throw this one out because she asks it. So when you're doing a thin HMA overlay, is it better to seal your joints prior to placing that mat? I know that's not what we're talking about today, but I think it's kind of an interesting transition. I'm going to go ahead and go here. We put what's known as a U-boss, which is a thin 3/4 inch over concrete. We did not seal, and we had glorious defeat. Do any people on my call today, and can you at least go down May's question, would you seal your concrete joints prior to putting your HMA thin overlays over it? And if the answer is you don't know,
We
go ahead,
don't.
Sarah.
We
Okay.
don't. When we have put asphalt, either a 2-inch or an ultra thin, neither of them, we go back and seal the joints beforehand. And we
Okay.
haven't, so far we've had, because we have a lot of ASR type issues. And so far they have held up pretty well. Typically though, we're doing like a 2-inch overlay with an ultra thin on top of it, trying to keep the water out of the pavements. But we have not been sealing the joints prior to that.
Well, if I could dovetail on that, she also, or forgive me, May also says, do you do any particular cleaning of those joints prior to paving? But don't know. Wow, no. Oh, cool. Okay.
Blow and go.
Stunning. All right. Anybody else? Sorry. Anybody else have any comments regarding that? Because Arkansas is one of many. We did not, and we did not have victory, but that doesn't mean we're not going to try again. We're learning a lot. Most of us is active cracking versus passive, and we have soils that are just, well, they're just not very good. So normally what we will do, we overlay quite a bit, and we will place a base mix of asphalt over our concrete prior to overlaying it. But that's been a practice for at least 20, 30 years. So anyone else for May's question regarding it? Otherwise, I got another line of
So-
questioning I can throw at you.
We won't seal our good performing joints. If we've got a joint that's deteriorated, we will probably patch that and then do any kind of overlays, just because we know that's probably going to get a lot of reflective cracking. Any HMA overlays on bare PCC is a 2-lift overlay in Illinois. We don't do a single thin lift. We have done some ultra thin bonded wearing courses, or U-BAWs as Phil likes to call them, with great success, but we don't seal any joints before we do that.
10-4. New Mexico? I'm sorry, Jeff. Nothing? You're still muted, sir. Sorry. I don't mean to keep pointing that out, but I don't know. We can't hear you, sir. Nope. Uh-oh. Well, Jeff says next go great. I mean, I'm assuming I can't read lips. But I think your mic might have left us, Jeff. So I'm going to come back to you a couple times. Just give me a thumbs up, thumbs down if you think something may be created. Speaking of which, Larry wants to ask you this, John. What is sealing longitudinal joints preventing, John? Question mark.
Larry, that is a great question that I don't know the answer to. I will look that, do a little bit of investigation why that is. In our life cycle models, we seal it at construction, and then we come back in 20 years and route and seal that longitudinal joint again. I don't know why.
Yeah. Thank you, John, for your honesty.
I mean, is that anything that Scott can provide a little bit of insight on, being a contractor in Illinois?
No, we've been doing it on new concrete pavements in the Chicagoland area in Illinois for so many years, like John said, that, when we're bidding on these control joint sawing and sealing jobs, it's just part of the everyday practice of all the longitudinal joints get properly cleaned and sealed.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, we always got to add some zingers. You know how it is. Speaking of zingers, I enjoy this one. I'm just going to ask. Sarah, what would it take for Arkansas to change its stance regarding sealing joints?
Above
That's
my
the exact question. That is exact. I love the question. That's exactly the question. Above your pay grade. That's a good sidestep. Good
yeah, no, I would think we definitely have to see a significant amount of research showing it wasn't necessary, even though our joint sealant doesn't, in my opinion, doesn't seem to last as long as I think it should. But it would definitely be a discussion between maintenance, materials, probably construction and upper management if we were to make that decision. It wouldn't be made lightly.
10-4.
Well, on that topic, before we leave, John, I feel like you've shared that, that's something, on this discussion of changing policy. I mean, is that something that you're willing to speak to right now, that Illinois currently is a no seal
Right.
But are you guys looking into potentially modifying that current policy?
All policies are subject to change. I'm just going to put my PC hat on there. But the interesting thing is we made that initial decision based on some research initially from Wisconsin. Wisconsin has since gone back and gone to a seal state. So, but we have not followed suit. I don't know if the rivalry between Illinois and Wisconsin's gotten worse or what, but we're not seeing any real issues with it at the time being. We do have some abnormally or higher than anticipated patching quantities in our mechanistic empirical concrete pavements. I don't know if some of that has to do with some of our practices. We've got a lot of research that we need to dig into. So there's a potential that it could change, but not without some serious investigation.
Understandable. Yeah, like I said, in our previous conversations, you kind of alluded to it. So I guess wanted to throw that out there for all the people in attendance that, again, especially in this industry, right? We tend to fall into that, well, quote, this is the way we've always done it. And, you know, if there is some research that can back it up on why changing one way or another, it definitely provides, you know, it's worth looking into. So.
Well, Vince, I hope I've answered your question. That's a nice one. Real quick, I have a very only one or two. Do you, and I'll read this from Paul, what type of hot seal crack filler do you use? Is there fiber crack sealer preferred? Yeah, is a fiber crack sealer preferred? I'd like to ask that of Scott, because you seem to know quite a bit about hot pour. I'm unfamiliar with a fiber crack sealer. Is that something you have in Illinois? And my ignorance is shown.
You know, we do, but I'll be honest, probably the majority of the fiber reinforced crack filling that we do is crack filling. Some of the various townships and counties and things like that still put that material. It's expensive, but they do use it in their crack maintenance program, not necessarily our joint sealant programs.
But they're in concrete, right, guys? You're still
Yep, they're in concrete.
Okay. So the question was still along the lines. I didn't know how to ask that. I just asked it directly. And obviously IDOT's shaking his head. I don't have any knowledge about that. So hopefully, Paul, that answers your question in particular. I have a couple more.
I'm gonna jump you, Phil. Again, kind of on that same topic, talking about materials in joint sealing. So I'm gonna grab this one out of the queue. Again, just because I'm looking at doing a little bit of research on this one myself. And Scott and maybe John, you guys can chime in on this one. Any comment on unsealed joints with the addition of concrete sealers, whether it's like a saline or a bio-based product? I guess I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts on any benefits added to your seal or unseal utilizing some of these additional products.
Well, guys, I'll jump in real quick. You know, the sealing industry has been looking at that. Two different applications. The various sealants, sealers, I should say, going in our concrete joint faces for a separate reason than joint sealing. What we're looking at as an industry right now is if they're used in conjunction with each other, if you use a concrete joint face sealer, will it affect our joint adhesion of sealants in those joints? And right now they're saying no, but that's the only reason we've looked at it. So it's really two different applications.
Yeah, so I think the sealants that you're talking about are more to seal the concrete itself from chloride ingress.
Yeah.
We do a lot of that sealant program with our bridge decks because we salt the living hell out of them. Pardon my language. But for our pavements, even if we're using traditional black rebar, we don't see a whole lot of corrosion or anything like that. But then again, our dowels are all epoxy coated, and typically our tie bars as well. So they're protected. But like I said, when we go to tear out a really old concrete pavement, we don't see a whole lot of deterioration from chloride ingress attacking that steel. So to this point in time, we have not done a whole lot of concrete sealant.
Even on your CRC pavements?
Even in our
Yep.
CRC pavements, yeah. Now the Chicago area still, they build all their CRC pavements with epoxy coated rebar. So they build the Cadillac version, but the rest of the state builds it with black bar.
Good to know. So Patrick, I hope that helped to answer your question that you had there, sir. Phil, you got a next one to throw at the panel?
I do, but I'm gonna read this one because I think it's important. James replies back regarding the Wisconsin thing. It's come up 3 times. I'm just gonna read it. This is not a question. Wisconsin policy is : it's the department policy to fill contraction expansion joints on low-speed urban concrete pavements with a design speed less than 40 miles an hour. This policy applies to new construction of low-speed urban highways and all functional classes of highways and all types of concrete pavement. I just felt that he put it in there. I'd like to read that into the record. So we know kind of what Wisconsin does now, and I appreciate, James, you taking the time to put that in there and allowing me to read it. I have Mr. Zong asking a few questions. I'm going to go to my friend Scott. You've talked about silicon sealants. Can you please comment on epoxy-based sealants regarding concrete joints? Scott, do you have any comments regarding epoxy-based sealants to concrete joints?
Well, yeah, quite honestly, we use that a fair amount in a lot of the private jobs, in some of these Amazon facilities and large concrete projects like that. We've never really used them as far as like Illinois DOT or some of these other projects. And again, they've performed very well. Traditionally, I believe they've stayed away from them because of the expense of the sealant. And I'm not saying anything about the performance of them. I'm just commenting on the upfront expense of them. We have put them in, and they seem to work just fine.
DOTs, anything else to add regarding epoxies? Hearing none.
We don't have any experience with it. I think if we were to add that expense, it would affect the LCCA process and potentially be a negative in that arena.
Okay. Does anybody use polyurethane sealants? Hearing none. Anyone? That's fine.
We've had, Michigan has done it time to time just as an alternate to the hot pour, just where we were seeing some potential performance issues with hot pour, but not widespread.
Okay, especially not on APLs, right?
Correct.
Okay, that's our friend Larry trying to throw curveballs. Thank you, Larry. It's always a joy to try and answer questions. I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm going to go ahead and I've got a couple more, and then I'm going to go, let's see, about 5 more minutes, and then we have a little wrap up. You guys, I love you. You're doing great. This has been a wonderful time. You're still asking questions. I love it. But I need to get back to asking, let's see, I ignored it. Marcy has a question. What do you do when your joints are greater than 2 inches? Does that matter? I'm going to throw that there. Marcy asked that question. The exact question is, what do you do with a wide joint failure greater than 2 inches in concrete? I am an asphalt guy, so I'm just going to go and say panel, ...
The only comment that I could make to that is we do seal a lot of wider than 2-inch wide expansion joints in various applications. The problem with it becomes is your width to depth ratios when you do that. As an example, and this is no reflection on the design or anything else, but last year on one of our larger projects in Chicago, they had us sealing awfully wide expansion joints on the Kennedy Expressway, and we had a lot of performance issues with them over the winter just because of with the depth and then the tires and impact loading and everything else on them. So it's got pluses and minuses. I just really think you need to look at it before you design them that way to have hot bore sealants and things put on them.
Okay, that's probably what I'm gonna get. We'll take that, thank you. I like May's question, I gotta ask it. So I know we've kind of touched it before, and I want to go to my northern states on this one. But she asks, how does concrete pavement perform with unsealed joints during freeze thaw, especially when salt stays inside those joints? Does anybody have thoughts about that? I hope, Jeff, your mic's working. Nope. Anybody? Hit me.
So the question is if you have freeze thaw and you're salting your roads, that the salt would stay in those joints?
If they're unsealed, correct. Is that true or not? What do you think?
The theory behind the thin sawed joints was that the joints are so thin that the traffic would remove any material that would go in there. So we haven't seen any issues with that.
10-4. I think that's a good stopping point. I'm going to go ahead and cut the questions off. I have 4 more to answer, but they're coming in a little bouncing back and forth. And for continuity suits, why not go ahead and answer you guys and send the questions directly to our panelists, and then we can email you some of these final questions. At this time, I'd like to kick it back to our leader, Rob Green, for some final thoughts and some future directions. Rob?
All right. Phil, thank you as always for moderating this panel discussion. And I want to thank everyone for the fantastic job, our panel members today, and even more so all the attendees as usual. Your questions, again, Phil and I have made the comment multiple times. It's your questions that kind of help drive these, right? We purposely look for shorter presentations just to kind of start scratching that surface, but really to kind of get the juices flowing, but want to make it more that opportunity for you, everybody out there, to be able to ask those questions. So hopefully we were able to address your question and you can hear the answer from the panelists. For those questions that we haven't gotten to, as Phil just mentioned, what we'll do is we'll go back, we'll share it with everybody, and we will get a response back out to you. So before we close, I always like to throw out there, if there are any other future topics you would like to see a webinar on, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I chair of a task force that helps put these on. We've got representatives from all 4 of our partnerships. So we got Rocky Mountain West, Southeast, Northeast, and of course the Midwest. So we can get a broad perspective on any topic that you have that's related to pavement preservation. So if you've got something, please feel free to send it our way. On that note, our next webinar is going to be scheduled for the first quarter in 2026. I do not have a specific date nailed down as of yet, but the fun thing about these, right, after you attend one of them, you are now like forever in Todd's email loop. So you will get future emails of any of our events, which is great. The National Center is a great resource for you to tap into. Your regional partnerships are even better. It's all about sharing information and helping one another, right? Doesn't matter what agency, whether you're state, provincial, local agency, we're all trying to wrestle with the same questions, same issues. And you know what? I mean, a lot of these guys, Phil and John, can definitely attest to it. I'm not afraid to throwing out an email going, hey, I got a question on this. What are you guys doing in your states, just to kind of help form an opinion and figure out a way moving forward. That's the greatest thing about building this network, is that you have this group of people that are always more than willing and happy to help. Take advantage of it. So with that, like I said, our next one is scheduled first quarter of 2026. I hope to see you all there. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays to everyone. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.